I used to believe that life falls apart slowly, like a slow leak you never notice until the carpet is soaked. But the truth is, life can crack open in a single moment, a moment so small, so ordinary, you don't even notice the knife until it's already twisted. For me, that moment was a Tuesday afternoon, as quiet and harmless as any other, when I walked into my daughter's room to put away her laundry and saw something that hollowed me out from the inside. It wasn't anything dramatic, not at first, just a notebook half hidden beneath her pillow, the corner bent from being opened too many times. But the second I saw my name written on the first page, something in my chest tightened. I should have stopped. I should have respected her privacy. But mothers know when something is wrong long before anyone says a word. My daughter, Emily, used to be sunshine, barefoot in the grass, hair in braids, always singing, always dreaming. But lately she'd turned quiet, guarded, drifting through the house like a ghost. And ghosts don't write harmless things in notebooks. I opened the first page and felt the world tilt beneath me. Mum doesn't know what he does when she's not home. My fingers went cold. The words were written in her small, slanted handwriting, the loops shaky, as if she'd been scared while writing them. I flipped to the next page, hands trembling. I don't think I'm safe here anymore. My breath caught. A ringing filled my ears. At first I told myself she must be writing a story. She loved making up mysteries, building entire worlds inside her head. Maybe this was one of her creative exercises. But then I saw the third line. I wish Mum would leave him. I wish she could see what I see. My knees nearly buckled, because there was only one him she could have meant. My husband. Her stepfather. I stared at the words, my pulse thundering. I wanted to run to her school, pull her out, hold her, beg her to tell me everything. But another part of me, a darker, steadier part, knew that if I confronted her right away, she'd shut down. She always did whenever something scared her. Silence was her shield. I closed the notebook and pressed it to my chest, feeling its weight like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. And that was when I heard the front door open. His footsteps, heavy, familiar. I shoved the notebook back under the pillow and forced myself to breathe. When he walked down the hallway and saw me standing there, he smiled. That smile, the one that used to make me feel safe, but now only made me feel watched. "You're home early," he said, his voice warm, as if he were the kind of man who couldn't possibly be hiding something monstrous. I nodded, my voice stuck somewhere deep in my throat. "Laundry," I whispered, holding up the basket. He kissed my cheek, lingering for a second too long, and something in me recoiled. I could smell his cologne, the same one he wore every day, the one I used to love. Now it made me feel sick. That night, I couldn't eat. Every time he asked if I was okay, I wanted to scream, "What did you do to my daughter?" But fear is a quiet thing, a slow poison, and it kept my mouth shut. When Emily came home, she barely spoke. She moved around him like he was a shadow she didn't want touching her. I watched everything suddenly. How she stiffened when he walked past her, how she held her arms protectively around herself, how she avoided looking at him directly. These were not the behaviours of a child making up stories. These were the behaviours of a child trying to survive. That night, after everyone went to sleep, I sat alone in the kitchen with the lights off. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the hallway clock, and the racing of my own thoughts. I didn't know what was happening, not fully, but I knew my daughter was scared. I knew she felt unsafe. And any mother who's ever felt danger brushing against her child knows how quickly love can turn into something feral. I couldn't sleep, not even for a minute. Every noise made me flinch, every creak became a threat. I thought about waking Emily, taking her somewhere safe, anywhere safe. But where? And safe from whom? I needed to know the truth. I needed to hear it from her lips. So the next morning, when he left for work, I sat on the edge of her bed and asked her softly, "Sweetheart, what does he do when I'm not home?" The way she froze, completely, absolutely, was all the answer I needed. She didn't even look up. She just whispered, "Mum, please don't make me say it." And that was the moment my world shattered, because whatever she couldn't say was worse than anything I could imagine. I didn't move for a long moment. Her whisper felt like ice water sliding down my spine, freezing everything inside me. I wanted to pull her into my arms, tell her I could fix everything, that nothing would ever hurt her again. But she sat there stiff and shrinking, like even the air around her carried danger. I reached for her hand gently, and she flinched, not violently, not dramatically, but enough. A small, instinctive recoil, a child avoiding pain she's already learned too well. My heart cracked open. "Emily," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady, "whatever happened, whatever is happening, it's not your fault. You can tell me anything." She shook her head hard, blinking fast, and I saw tears gathering along her lashes. "He said you wouldn't believe me," she murmured, barely audible. That sentence hit me like a punch to the stomach. My husband knew she might speak. He already anticipated her fear, and he'd planted doubt in her mind like poison. I wanted to scream. Instead, I swallowed the rage, the panic, the guilt for ever trusting him with my daughter. "I believe you," I said firmly, even though I didn't know the details yet. But it didn't matter. I believed her because mothers don't wait for facts. They read the tremors in their children's voices, the shadows in their eyes. She finally looked up at me then, her face pale, her eyes swollen from holding back too much for too long. "Mum," she whispered, "please don't leave me alone with him again." The room tilted. I had to grip the bed frame so I wouldn't fall. I pulled her into my arms, and this time she didn't pull away. She collapsed into me like she'd been holding herself together for months and finally cracked. I held her, stroking her hair, trying to anchor myself because inside I was shattering. Every instinct screamed to grab her, run, hide, burn the world down if I had to. But I kept my voice soft. "You will never be alone with him. Not ever again." She clung to me tighter. When she finally calmed enough to breathe normally, I asked, "Did he hurt you?" And the silence that followed. It wasn't the silence of confusion or thought. It was the silence of truth. Heavy, absolute, devastating. I pulled back and cupped her face gently. "Emily, look at me. I need you to tell me the truth, sweetheart. Did he touch you?" Her eyes filled instantly. She bit her lip, trying not to cry, and that was enough. I felt something inside me break in a way I didn't think I'd recover from. She didn't have to say a word. The answer was already written in every trembling breath. I kissed her forehead, trying to keep my own tears from falling. "I promise you," I whispered, "I will protect you. I will get us out of here." But promises were only the beginning. I had no plan, no evidence, no witnesses, nothing except a trembling child and the burning certainty that the man sleeping in my bed was not who I thought he was. Every second he spent under my roof now felt like a threat. I needed time, I needed calm, I needed to pretend until I could escape, and pretending became the hardest thing I'd ever done. When he came home that evening, I felt my pulse jump like prey hearing footsteps in the dark. He walked in casually, kissed my cheek, slipped his arms around my waist like always. My skin crawled so violently I almost stepped away, but I forced myself to stay still, to act normal. If he sensed something had changed, if he realized I knew, I didn't want to imagine what he might do. Emily hid in her room and refused to come out. He asked me why she was acting strange. I lied. "Girl stuff," I said with a shrug. "She's moody today." He chuckled. "Teenagers," he said, grabbing a beer. His voice sounded normal, but I heard something underneath it, something darker. I watched him out of the corner of my eye the whole night. The way he moved, the way he called her name, the way she didn't answer. And every time he looked down the hallway, I felt my stomach twist. When he finally went to bed, I stayed awake on the couch, staring at the front door, wondering how long I needed to pretend. A day? A week? Could I survive? Even one more night under the same roof as him? I didn't know. I only knew one thing for sure. Emily could never be alone with him again. I thought about taking her and leaving immediately, but he'd notice. He'd chase us. He'd twist the story. Without proof, he could turn it all back on us. I needed something concrete, something undeniable. And I hated myself for even thinking it. But what if Emily's notebook wasn't the only thing she'd hidden? What if there were more notes, more pages, more details? The next morning, after I drove him to work, I asked Emily again, gently, if she'd written anything else down. She hesitated, then nodded. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded piece of notebook paper. "I was going to give this to the school counsellor," she said quietly, "but I got scared." My hands shook as I unfolded it. This time, the words weren't vague, they weren't coded, they weren't hesitant. They were a confession, a plea for help she'd never delivered, and reading them made my blood run cold. By the time I finished, one thing was clear. This wasn't just fear, this wasn't just discomfort, this was trauma, and the monster who caused it was living in my house, eating dinner at my table, smiling at me like a husband who loved his family. I folded the paper carefully and looked at my daughter. "We're leaving," I said, "today." But leaving wouldn't be as easy as opening the door, because monsters don't let go of their prey willingly. And he wasn't going to let us walk away without a fight. Leaving should have been simple. Pack a bag, grab my daughter's hand, walk out the door, drive until the road ran out. But life doesn't work like that when a predator believes he owns the house, the family, the narrative. Monsters don't sleep deeply, and they sense change in the air the way wolves smell fear. The moment I told Emily we were leaving today, she looked terrified, not relieved. That told me everything. "Mum, what if he comes home early?" Her voice trembled, and I felt the same panic ripple through me. He never came home early, not once in all the years we'd been together. But now I didn't trust anything. I kept watching the window, half expecting his truck to pull into the driveway. My hands shook as I stuffed clothes into a bag. Nothing organised, just whatever I could grab quickly. Emily hovered near the doorway like she feared stepping too far into the room, or maybe she feared stepping too far away from me. When I zipped the bag, her eyes darted toward the front door. "Mum, we have to hurry." I nodded, but as I reached for my phone to call a friend, someone safe, someone who could take us in, I saw it. 3 missed calls from him, all within the last 20 minutes. My stomach dropped. He never called this much, not unless something was wrong, or unless he felt something slipping out of his control. I didn't call back. I didn't text. Instead, I put the phone face down on the counter and told Emily to get her shoes. But just as she did, a car horn echoed from outside. Not a stranger's horn. His horn, his truck in the driveway. He was home early. My blood turned to ice. Emily's eyes went round and terrified. "Mum," she whispered, "he's here." I grabbed her hand and pulled her quickly toward the back of the house. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no plan. I only knew we couldn't be standing by the front door when he walked in. I heard his boots hit the porch, slow and steady. Too steady. That wasn't the sound of a man coming home. It was the sound of a man listening, waiting, hunting for something unexpected. I pushed Emily into her room and shut the door behind us as quietly as I could, pressing my finger to my lips. Her breath shook so violently I could hear it over my own pulse. The front door opened with that familiar creak. "Honey?" His voice was calm, too calm. That was the voice he used when he wanted control. "You home?" He waited. The silence stretched into something sharp. He walked deeper into the house. "Why aren't you picking up your phone?" His tone tightened. I pulled Emily into her closet and closed the door, leaving only a thin sliver of light at the bottom. We crouched between boxes of old toys and holiday decorations, and I wrapped my arms around her trembling shoulders. I could hear him walking through the kitchen, then the living room, then the hall. "Where are you?" His voice was lower now, laced with suspicion. Every step he took made the floor vibrate through the closet walls. My daughter buried her face into my chest. I held her tighter and prayed he wouldn't open this door. But then He stopped, right outside her room. His shadow moved across the floor under the door, slow, deliberate. My heart slammed against my ribs so hard I thought he might hear it. "Emily?" he called softly, not gently. Soft, like a snake brushing the grass. She froze. I felt her breath catch, then stop. She didn't move, not even an inch. I didn't dare breathe. He turned the doorknob. The door opened. Light filled the room, but not the closet. He walked inside. His boots echoed against the wood floor as he took a few slow steps. The closet door trembled as he touched it. I swallowed hard. If he opened it, everything would break loose. My fear, my rage, every piece of truth Emily had been too terrified to say aloud. But then, his phone rang. The sound shattered the moment. He pulled his hand back, muttering something under his breath, and walked out of the room to answer. When his footsteps faded, I let out a shaky exhale I didn't realise I'd been holding. Emily was crying silently. I cupped her face and whispered, "We're getting out. We just need one chance." That chance came faster than expected. He walked outside while talking on the phone, pacing back and forth, his voice rising with irritation. Through the small closet sliver, I saw him walk toward the driveway. This was it. Our moment. I grabbed the bag, took Emily's hand and whispered, "Now." We slipped out of the house through the back door, running quietly across the yard. I didn't care about shoes or jackets. I didn't care about anything except distance. When we reached the neighbour's fence, Emily climbed over first. I followed, scraping my hands, my knees, but it didn't matter. Not when survival was on the other side. Once we reached the next yard, I grabbed my phone and called the only person I trusted to not ask questions, my sister. "Come get us," I whispered breathlessly. "Don't call, don't text, just come." She didn't even hesitate. "I'm on my way." While waiting, we hid behind the neighbour's shed, crouched low, listening. My husband's voice drifted through the yards, frustrated, sharp, searching. He must have realised the house was empty. He must have known we left. And the way he yelled my name, like I was property that had escaped, sent a chill running through me so deep I nearly gagged. When my sister's car finally pulled onto the street, I grabbed Emily and ran like the ground behind us was on fire. We tumbled into the back seat, and she peeled away from the curb before I even got the door fully closed. As we sped down the street, Emily looked back through the window. Her voice shook. "Mum, he's going to come after us." I squeezed her hand tightly, feeling the weight of her fear. "Let him try," I whispered. "This time, he won't win." My sister drove like she was trying to outrun a storm, her eyes flicking to the rearview mirror every few seconds, as if she expected his truck to appear at any moment. I kept my arms wrapped around Emily, trying to steady her trembling, but the truth was I was shaking just as hard. My mind raced through everything. What he would do when he realised we were gone, whether he'd call the police pretending to be a worried husband, whether he'd try to track my phone. I tossed it out the window before we reached the end of the street, watching it disappear in the grass. My sister glanced at me, startled. "Good," she said under her breath. "Smart." We didn't go to her house, not yet. That would be the first place he looked. Instead, she drove to an old motel 2 towns over, the kind with flickering neon signs and paint peeling off the door frames. It wasn't safe, not really, but it was hidden, anonymous, forgettable. And forgettable was exactly what we needed. When we stepped into the motel room, Emily clung to me so tightly I wondered if she feared I'd vanish if she let go. The room smelled like bleach and old cigarettes, and the carpet scratched against my bare feet, but I didn't care. It was a place he didn't know, a place he couldn't reach us immediately. My sister locked the door, slid the metal chain across, and pulled the curtains shut. Only then did she turn to me with wide, horrified eyes. "You have to tell me what happened." I looked at Emily, who shook her head violently. She didn't want to talk. She didn't want to relive anything, and I couldn't force her. Not now, not yet. "We just need to stay hidden," I whispered, "just for a little while." My sister didn't ask again. She simply nodded, understanding more than I said. She sat beside Emily and wrapped her arms around us both, forming a circle of safety I'd been too afraid to claim alone. For the first time in hours, I let myself breathe. Not fully, not deeply, but enough. Emily lay against me, exhausted, her eyes heavy, her face pale. I stroked her hair, my heart breaking with every small flinch when the pipes rattled or a door slammed somewhere outside. Trauma had a way of echoing through ordinary sounds, turning everything into a threat. While Emily rested, I whispered to my sister the pieces I could say without falling apart. The notebook, the flinches, the confession she couldn't speak. My sister listened in horror, her hand covering her mouth. "We have to go to the police," she said, "immediately." I knew that. Of course I knew that. But fear is a force that paralyzes logic. What if they didn't believe us? What if they said there wasn't enough proof? What if they questioned Emily until she broke again? And worse, what if he found us first? "Let me think," I whispered. "Just a few hours, just let me think." My mind churned through every possibility. The police, a lawyer, a women's shelter, child protective services. But each option carried risks, exposure, questioning, official paperwork, phone calls. All of it could alert him. And I wasn't ready to gamble my daughter's safety on a system I didn't fully trust yet. Not until I had something stronger, something undeniable. As night fell, the motel walls felt too thin. Shadows moved under the door whenever someone walked by. Emily jerked awake each time, gripping my arm, her breathing harsh and panicked. I reassured her again and again, whispering that she was safe, even though I wasn't sure it was true. My sister insisted we take turns staying awake. She drank motel coffee like it was armour, keeping watch by the window. Around midnight, she hissed my name, her voice low and urgent. "There's a truck circling the parking lot." My heart slammed so hard I felt dizzy. I crawled to the window, staying low, and peered through the thin slice of curtain. The headlights washed over the cracked pavement, slow and searching. My blood went cold. It was his truck. He must have followed my phone. Even though I'd thrown it out, he must have tracked the last ping, and he was close. Too close. "Turn off the lights," I whispered. My sister hit the switch instantly. Emily curled into my side, terrified. We stayed completely still, barely breathing, listening as his truck crept past our door. He didn't stop, not yet. But I knew that was only luck. He would check every motel, hotel, rest stop, gas station. He would hunt, because monsters don't accept escape. They pursue it. When his truck finally left the parking lot, my sister exhaled shakily. "We can't stay here," she said. "He'll be back." I nodded. My mind was a storm, but within it something sharp and clear emerged. We had to disappear. Not just hide, disappear. And that meant one thing, getting help from someone he would never expect. As the motel air conditioner rattled in the background, I picked up my sister's phone and dialed a number I never thought I'd call, my ex-husband, Emily's biological father. We hadn't spoken in years. Our history was complicated, messy, painful. But he loved Emily, always had, and he would burn the world down before he let anyone hurt her. He answered on the second ring, his voice groggy with sleep. "Hello?" I swallowed hard. "It's me," I whispered. "I need your help, and I don't have much time." There was a beat of silence, then his entire tone shifted. "What happened?" I looked at Emily, who watched me with wide, frightened eyes. "It's about Emily," I said, and those 4 words were enough. He didn't ask for explanations or proof. He didn't question my urgency or the hour. He simply said, "Tell me where you are. I'm coming." When I hung up, I felt a small shift, like the first crack of dawn after a long, terrifying night. Emily's father could protect her in ways I couldn't alone. He had resources, connections, and a level of anger that could match the darkness we were facing. But calling him also meant something else, something that made my stomach twist. If her stepfather found out that we involved him, this wouldn't just be about escape anymore, it would become war. The hours between midnight and dawn felt endless, like time itself was holding its breath with us. Emily fell asleep eventually, curled against me, her small hand gripping my shirt as if she feared I might disappear in the dark. My sister dozed off in the chair by the window, her body slumped but her hand still wrapped around the curtain edge. I couldn't sleep, not with my heart pounding in my throat, not with my eyes locked on the door, not with the memory of his truck circling the motel like a predator pacing outside a cave. Every few minutes I checked the parking lot, terrified I'd see those headlights sweeping across the asphalt again. But the lot stayed empty, quiet, almost peaceful. A false peace, the kind that hides danger underneath it. When the first weak light of morning crept through the edges of the curtain, my sister jerked awake. She rubbed her eyes and whispered, "What time is he getting here?" I checked her phone. My ex-husband had called twice. Both missed calls, texts followed. "On my way, ETA 30 minutes. Relief washed through me so suddenly it made my eyes sting. I'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone show up when I needed them, not question me, not judge me, not hesitate, just show up. My sister squeezed my arm gently. "He's going to lose his mind when he hears what happened." I nodded. Part of me feared that the truth would break him. Another part hoped it would. Maybe broken men fight harder. Emily woke with a small cry, confused for a moment, then clinging to me when she remembered where we were. I stroked her back, whispering that we were leaving soon. She didn't ask where. She didn't need to. Anywhere that wasn't home was good enough. I helped her wash her face in the small motel bathroom. She stared at her reflection like she didn't recognize the girl looking back. Frightened eyes, pale cheeks, hair tangled from a night without real sleep. "Mom," she whispered, voice trembling, "is he mad we left?" The question splintered something in me. "Sweetheart," I said, kneeling so we were eye level. "I don't care if he's mad. I care that you're safe. That's the only thing that matters." She nodded, but I could tell she didn't fully believe it yet. Trauma plants doubt in children, deep, tangled roots that take years to pull out. A car engine approached outside, not his truck, a different sound, lower, smoother. I peeked through the curtain and froze. It was him. My ex-husband, Emily's real father. He stepped out of the car with a look I'd never seen on him before, rage, grief, fear, all twisted together. He wasn't a perfect man. We had hurt each other in our past, but in that moment, he looked like the one person who could stand between us and the monster chasing us. I opened the door quietly, and as soon as he saw Emily, everything inside him broke. He dropped to his knees, arms wide, and she ran into them, sobbing. He held her like he was afraid she might slip through his fingers, whispering her name over and over, his voice cracking. Watching them felt like watching a wound being stitched shut, not healed, not even close, but held together long enough so it wouldn't bleed out. He finally looked up at me, eyes blazing. "Tell me everything." I glanced at Emily. Not here, not in front of her. He understood. We stepped outside while my sister stayed with Emily inside the room. The morning air was cold, but nothing compared to the ice running through my veins as I handed him the note she had written. He read it slowly, jaw tightening with every line. When he reached the bottom, he closed his eyes and inhaled sharply, a sound that was half agony, half fury. "I'm going to kill him," he whispered. "I swear to God I'm going to—" "No!" I cut in firmly. "If you do that, he wins. He gets to be the victim. He gets sympathy. We lose everything." He clenched his fists, shaking. "He hurt my daughter." "I know," I whispered, tears burning my eyes. "And I want him to pay, but not with fists, not with rage, with truth, with evidence, with the law, with everything he's terrified of." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing the cracked sidewalk. "So, what's the plan?" The plan. I hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, hadn't thought beyond survival. But suddenly the pieces started forming. We need a lawyer, a good one, someone who knows cases like this, someone who can get us protection before he tries to twist the narrative. My ex-husband nodded. I know someone, I'll call him. That was step 1. Step 2 was harder. We need to file a police report, I said. But not here, not in this town. I don't trust the officers who know him, who like him, who would believe him before they believe a scared child. Then we go somewhere else, he said. Anywhere else. Before we left, I stepped back into the motel room and looked at Emily. We're going with your dad now, I said gently. Okay? She nodded slowly, but her eyes darted toward the door, anxiety rising again. Will he find us? I crouched in front of her and took her hands. He might try, I said honestly, but he won't win, not this time. We gathered what little we had, one bag, my sister's phone, and the courage scraped together from fear and love. As we walked to the car, Emily held my hand with a grip so tight it felt like a vow. My ex-husband opened the back door for her, watching every shadow in the parking lot like he expected her stepfather to jump out of one. Before I got in, a small thought crept in, cold, dangerous, undeniable. If her stepfather had already found the motel once, he might not be far behind, and he wouldn't stop until he dragged us back into the nightmare we'd escaped. We left the motel as quietly as possible, my ex-husband driving with both hands gripping the wheel like he expected danger to jump into the road at any second. Emily sat in the back seat between me and my sister, clutching my arm with one hand and her father's with the other. Her face was pale, her eyes wide, scanning every car we passed as if she expected his truck to appear beside us. I kept glancing at the rearview mirror too, my heartbeat thudding each time a pickup truck turned onto the road behind us. My ex-husband drove down back roads, switching routes constantly, refusing to stay on any main street for more than a minute. I didn't argue. His paranoia wasn't paranoia, it was caution, the kind that saves lives. When we finally reached his house, hidden at the end of a long rural road surrounded by tall pines and no neighbours in sight, Emily exhaled. Not fully, not deeply, but enough to loosen her grip on my arm. That tiny breath was the closest thing to relief she'd felt since we left the house. He carried her inside like she was still 6 years old, not 10, and she didn't protest. She buried her face into his chest while he held her, whispering soft promises through clenched teeth. My sister locked every door behind us, checked the windows twice, and pulled the curtains shut. For the first time, since discovering that notebook, I felt a thin sliver of safety. Not complete safety, but distance, walls, a door he didn't have a key to. My ex-husband sat Emily on the couch with a blanket around her and brought her a glass of water. Then he turned to me, jaw tight. We call the lawyer now, not later. I nodded, and he stepped outside to make the call so Emily wouldn't hear. While he was gone, she leaned against me, her voice soft and shaky. Mum, is it okay if I stay with Dad for a while? The question didn't hurt me. It broke me, because she didn't say it to choose sides. She said it because her father's house didn't hold trauma. It didn't hold shadows. It didn't hold him. Of course, sweetheart, I whispered, kissing the top of her head. You can stay as long as you want. My sister sat beside us, wrapping her arm around us both, creating a little island of protection on that old couch. When my ex-husband came back in, his face was pale with anger but steady with determination. The lawyer said we need to go to the sheriff's office in the next county. They have a trained child advocate team there. They won't dismiss her. My chest tightened with both fear and hope. We'll go, I said, all of us. But before we could leave, my ex-husband's phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression shifting into something dark and dangerous. It's him, he said. He's been calling non-stop. The sound of his voice sent a shiver across my skin. Don't answer, I murmured. Not yet. But my ex-husband shook his head. If I don't answer, he'll think he's right to panic. He might start looking for you again." He stepped outside, shutting the door behind him before we could protest. Emily stiffened, her breath quickening. I held her close, listening through the window crack as my ex-husband answered the call. "What the hell did you do?" his voice boomed. "Why is my wife, my daughter, missing?" Even from inside the house, I heard the venom in my husband's voice. The lies, the manipulation. "She's unstable," he claimed. "She took Emily in the middle of the night. I'm worried sick." My ex-husband nearly laughed, but there was no humour in the sound. "You don't get to play innocent," he snapped. "I know everything." A long, eerie silence followed. Then my husband's tone shifted, colder, deadlier. "You're making a mistake. She belongs with me." Hearing him say that made my stomach twist. Belongs, like she was property. My ex-husband stepped back inside, face flushed with fury. "He knows we're not home," he said. "He's going to start looking." I nodded slowly. This wasn't over, not even close. But we had something he didn't expect. Support, protection, and a lawyer already on standby. Emily tugged my sleeve. "Mum, I don't want him to find us." I looked into her terrified eyes and promised, "He won't." I prayed. I wasn't lying. We drove to the sheriff's office a couple of hours later. Emily stayed between us, holding both our hands as we walked inside. The building was quiet, sterile, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. A female officer greeted us gently, guiding us to a private room where a child advocate joined us. They spoke to Emily slowly, kindly, giving her time to breathe, time to choose her words. I sat outside the room, hearing only muffled pieces of her small voice. Every fragment felt like a knife. He touched. I was scared. "Mum didn't know." My sister held my hand tight as tears slid down my face. My ex-husband paced the hallway like a caged storm. After an hour, the door opened. The advocate's face was sombre but certain. "She was very brave," she said, "and what she described is enough for a full investigation and immediate protective orders." Relief hit me so hard I nearly collapsed. Emily came out and ran into my arms, sobbing. I whispered into her hair, promising again and again that she was safe now. Things moved fast after that. Officers were dispatched. A warrant was issued. My husband's name went into the system as a person of interest in a child endangerment and abuse case. And the moment they told me he was officially barred from contacting either of us, something inside me loosened for the first time in weeks. Not healed, not fixed, but no longer suffocating. We drove back to my ex-husband's house, exhausted, emotionally shredded, but carrying a small, fragile sense of victory. Emily curled up on the couch between us and finally fell into a deep sleep. My sister made coffee. My ex-husband sat beside me, his voice soft and tired. "You did good," he said. "You protected her. You got her out." I looked at Emily, her small chest rising and falling peacefully, and whispered, "I should have seen it sooner." But he shook his head. "You saw it when you needed to, and now he'll never touch her again." For the first time since this nightmare began, I let myself believe it. And as dawn broke outside those windows, painting the sky in pale gold, I realised something quietly, powerfully true. We weren't just survivors anymore. We were free.